All right. We're in. That's probably the last time I'm ever going to use that song because that was not very good. I need to find which. It didn't really. No, it didn't have the. Da-da-da-da-da. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the October Poetic Drams Virtual. I'm Ioannidis. I'm joined by Alex Moores, and we're here to taste some good whiskey.
Indeed.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Dov, always good to see you. Betty, welcome.
Excellent. Beauty.
It actually was also a hot day here in Melbourne, for once, surprisingly.
For once and for a while. Classic multi-season day today. It's drab now, at least where I am.
Yes, I think it was it's roughly going to be the same as well here for a bit. Mm-hmm. But today we're going to taste 5 through 5 amazing society whiskies, a little bit of poetic pizzazz to them. And as per usual, we are going to start off with a little teaser. We are going to show you the November Outturn cover.
It's happening. There it is.
There it is, November Outturn. Now, for those who are new or who have only been Sliding members for a few months maybe, November Outturn will not be released on the first Friday of the month. It will be released mid-month. So Friday the 15th with the preview going live the week before. I think it's the 8th of November. It is a double issue. It's huge. It's massive. We've got 17 brand new casks coming and lots of other goodies, competitions, bundles, heaps of events. It's going to be fantastic. So
truly the most wonderful time of the year.
It really is. So keep an eye out for that. There'll be some emails, reminding everyone soon. But Alex, how are you feeling about the what we're about to taste?
Oh, it's a great lineup. It's a great lineup. I think it's always, some people who love peat say, oh, there's not enough peaty, or there's too much peaty, or there's not enough of the profile I like, not enough bourbon casks, not enough sherry casks. But I reckon this is a great cross-section of all the flavor profiles, lots of cool finishes, which are a bit hit and miss sometimes, but I've got the benefit already. These ones hit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. And look who has decided to join us across the ocean, Mr. Matt Bailey. It's funny because I could have sworn you were just here in my room with me.
I know. There he is. Oh, there he is. Look at
him.
There
he is.
I don't know who this imposter is with that profile picture coming in from the UK, but that's not
He should be working. He should be working. But first up, I reckon let's dive right into it.
I reckon let's dive in.
Heresy Blended Malt, Whiskey Barber.
Brilliant.
Oof. This is very good fun. This is the second cask strength Heresy we've featured ever. And all this year, actually.
Yes. Yep. I reckon it's a great, for those who've been with the Society for a long time, have seen the Heresies first back with Exotic Cargo number 1. They were a lot of fun to play with for the team, but I think at the start they were probably a little bit more for playing with and testing the water. And in fact, I think the first even 2, Exotic Cargo 1 and 2 and Pete Fairy 1 and 2, which were the first 4 Heresy, actually basically had like focus groups and member panels around them to see whether it was something that we wanted to play with, and people said yes. That's globally, I should say. And then that was the play bit. But now I think of late, maybe the last 10, 8 and 10 in particular, like the blending quality is just getting extremely good.
This absolutely. I mean, this one in particular is it's been on a journey. I presented this at Whiskey Festival in Brisbane over the weekend, and it blew a lot of people's minds, especially when I was telling them that it's a combination of of ex-bourbon hogsheads, I think they're refill, and first fill ex-French oak barriques that matured rum in the cognac region of France for 28 months.
Yeah, it's very tricky.
Had to clarify, there's no rum in this. This is all whiskey, but it is technically an ex-rum cask.
And it's just, even that story there shows how there's a lot of variables at play with that. And the blending process is going to have to be, pretty on its game to make sure that's well integrated. A lot of chance for imbalance in that. But I haven't actually tasted this yet tonight, but on the nose, it's the rum is there, or like there's that touch of the cane sweetness and a little tiny touch of ester, but it's not overpowering.
No, and that was my main note when presenting it. It's the esters aren't overpowering, as you said. It is very well integrated. 58.6%.
Yeah, which is again part of the blending process. You know, the 50 as a default for heresy, it must have been, well, I assume tested at 50, and then the team went, nah, it's got to be a little bit higher than that to carry the integration.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, the Writing Bureau earlier this year was the first Cask Strength Society heresy malt.
Yeah, it's got a bit more kick than the other heresies I can sort of immediately picture, but it's not. Again, it's not. The palate belies the 58.6%.
6, yeah.
Yeah. And the nose on that is excellent.
Yeah, it's real banana-y.
Banana's one of those odd ones too, because it can be a defect in certain processes, like it's, you know, too much banana can be a yeast issue, or or an off note if you're just trying to not produce something with banana in it. But this, I think, is intentional.
Well, for me, this is like a confectionery banana, like it's a banana brownie or a chocolatey banana cake sort of thing.
Yes. Yep, and as our friend and member Mark Warshall told me recently, having looked more into sake, the difference between fresh banana and baked banana is a world of difference in some spirits, and I think it is in here as well.
Oh yeah. So this one was released in October Outturn. This is an October Outturn feature, along with 3 of the other drams, or 2 of the others, I should say, 3 including this.
It's interesting. It's sort of, I often talk about, like, I like the cereal quality coming through, especially, you know, and not being overpowered by the cask influence. But here, I think I'm not getting a heap of the underlying grain component, but because of maybe the multiple casks, I don't really mind. Like, there's enough layer going on. It's just that sort of real malty cereal grain's not one of those layers for me, but there's heaps of fruit layers.
Do you find that in blends you don't detect that often?
I think blends either go one of 2 ways: really heavy on the grain, and you're sort of, it's almost like the grain is too harsh, or, well, this is for the ones where it's, you know, not just perfectly balanced and excellent, or it eliminates the grain.
Yeah,
I've never sort of had a really, I can't think off the top of my head, maybe a few that are intentionally more malt driven, but yeah, very rarely I think would a blend be. That's a very single malt characteristic. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, fair enough. There's the bottle there. Whiskey and Element in Melbourne. Whiskey is my jam. His signature bourbon emoji. Good to see you. I'm quite a fan of that one.
I like that. I don't even think, I mean, I put water in everything just to try it, but I'll wait till that's a lot lower down before I try it with this one, because I don't think it needs it.
No.
It would just be for curiosity.
It's an interesting one because to me it has got a little bit of bite to it, but I think that's also just because the room I'm in is a little bit warm, and temperature does play an aspect. Play a part. It is an aspect.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might even keep a decent amount of that, because I think that will open up too. That was just the freshly opened bottle just before we started, but I think that's changing quite quickly with the glass.
Feel free to keep some liquid in your glass, folks. It's always fun to go back and compare, contrast and compare.
Yeah, no, I agree with the confectionery, and I think even the fruit concept in this is, it's not, I don't know, it's definitely not that in-your-face rich fruit that often, like, just a straight-up rum cask finish on a single malt can be. There's a lot of complexity to the fruit.
There's a nice 8-minute video on our YouTube channel with Matt basically launching into his opinions on ex rum cask whiskies, of which he's not a fan. He's not a huge fan of it. But
Yeah,
he's
it's generally that
really
integration piece. I think it often fails. Yeah.
yeah, and that's fair enough. But he really had high praise for this integration, and I think it's well deserved. I mean, I there was definitely a lot of people who told me at Whiskey they're like, oh, I'll drink anything except for a blended whiskey. It's like, okay, try this.
Oh, that's just classic. It classically goes to show, doesn't it? The
Opinion changed
of what even what a blend is. They're probably picturing a 40% super grain base, as in not malt grain base. Your Johnny Red's equivalents, and then it's like, well, this is actually what a blend can be: cask strength, well integrated, and malt driven. Even though I said I can't taste the malt, but it's not overshadowed by other grains. So you can
but it's it's a considered blend.
Yes. Yeah.
I call it. There's thought behind it. It's not just a high volume. Not that there isn't thought behind those, but definitely a difference of, what is it? 2016 bottles worldwide.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
60 of them in Australia. So.
Yep. That's good. That's very nice.
I quite like that one. And, if you guys do want to buy a bottle of it, it's on sale now.
I don't have a particular poetry comment about this, though. Could have found a rum poem or something, but I've got all my poems are Scotch whiskey malt related that I've found.
The only poem that really comes to mind on this one is Whiskey Bar Black Sheep.
That's good. Did you pen that yourself? Is that an Adam original or?
That is, but that's as far as it goes for now.
Yeah, I mean, don't wait for the whole copyright of your whole book of poetry to come out first, and then you can talk about it.
Please, yeah, exactly. How do you think it compares to rum barber, like as a dessert?
I can see what they're saying about it, because I think it's like with the rum barber where it's not super estery because it's sort of been burnt off. Like it's taken some of the harshness out, but it's the taste is underlying it. I imagine that's where it comes from. But again, it's still not strong rum for me, because as you know, I sort of have this rum, not aversion, but I'm like those estery ones or the really like high sweet ones. I'm just like, nah, it's just not my profile.
I do remember Rumbustious last month.
Yes, that one actually was what people were telling me I might like as a generally malt drinker, not rum drinker, and I do agree. I think that was. I found that quite nice because of the lower ester, but then this is a level more. Like the rum is there, but it's more about the flavors that rum has as opposed to tasting like rum. If that makes sense. Pineapples and mangoes and all the tropicals I want from a rum are in here.
Yeah, fair enough. Should we?
The banana as well. Actually, now I'm getting the banana. Yeah,
you are getting the banana.
Yeah. Very good.
Shall we crack on to malt of the month?
Let's do it.
Cast 19.75, truly a Bobby Dazzler.
I love these ones.
These are great, and we've seen a few of them. We saw one last month, I believe, Maverick Martini on a Martinique, which was not very similar to this one, which is nice. Like there is still some difference in them, where I found that one was quite sparkling strawberries and such, whereas this is a bit more creamy.
And I think it's a nice middle ground between. There's been a few of the 19-year-old number 19s or 18-year-old maybe just before
those high teenage ones, yeah,
and there's always a link between them. Like they're pretty sort of easy to spot in a lineup, but they do differ. Yeah, no, that is nice. I agree with you. That's creamy and very confectionery on the nose, straight up.
Mr. Teague, top tip: if Mini Matt on Adam's shoulder starts spouting poetry, you've reached your limit. That's a good point, actually. And
that's why he's there. It's a test. It's all a test.
If he starts talking, just have some water. Betty, this is Moorish. I'm going to assume that was for the Whiskey Barber, which is absolutely fair enough. It is Moorish. And I know of a couple of members who have already demolished their bottles.
No, very quaffable dram. I mean, this is.
I'm excited to try this again
as well. Yeah, this is giving away a lot on the nose straight away.
Yeah. So I guess Distillery 19 is known for that old school malt character. There's a distillery there. It's on Distillery Road, and that's the only appealing words in that photo.
Yeah, it's nice. It's got the pagodas. It's a very classic.
It is. It's very stately as well,
isn't it? Yeah.
And a fun fact I did find today is that, ironically, Glengarry was actually owned by J.G. Thomson.
Very cool little link. How's that?
1884 till I think the early 1900s. And for those who don't know, J.G. Thomson is now owned by the Scotch Malt Whisky, well, owned by Artisanal Spirits Company, same house as the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. But also, J.G. Thomson was in the vaults. So Pip Hills purchased the vaults from J.G. Thomson. So it all comes back to the society.
Yeah, I think until about that time, actually, if you mentioned early 1900s, like about 1930s, I reckon until then it actually had the vaults building had a massive J.G. Thomson splayed right across the front of it. And it was only after a couple of other changed hands before the society that they took it down.
I think you're right. I believe I've seen that photo.
Yeah, I think probably if you Google vintage Vaults Leaf or something, or old Vaults Leaf, the black and white photos that come up will have it.
And there's one of their wash stills, and I believe they actually used to. I mean, this is unpeated malt, but I believe they used to distill smoked barley as well.
Yeah, it would make sense given one of the sort of older ones just playing around with it and then refining it. It certainly doesn't have any now, or this run in the current iteration. That is lovely. That's all strawberries and cream and orchards and brightness, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of apricots as well. I really just want to keep nosing this. Unfortunately, I will have to taste it.
I don't think it'll be unfortunate because it carries through. Actually, it's sometimes it's less good than the nose, but this one it's actually very similar. All the sort of core carries through.
Oh, that's got that same sort of syrupiness as a lot of the 128s do. I think I'm remembering that code correctly. Welsh.
Yep. That's right. It's quite effervescent, almost like even after that amount of age, almost 20 years old, but it's still got like quite a lot of zing on the back palate.
It definitely does. Especially, I mean, 53.7%, 19 years, first fill ex-bourbon maturation. So this was
that's first fill, yeah. So that's where a lot of that freshness is coming from.
Yeah, I find a lot of these 19s that we've been seeing are first fill, in fact.
Yeah, yep.
It's always nice.
It can risk that. Well, not risk really. I don't think I've ever seen a bad one, but yeah, it pushes it into that much sweeter category than if you're using a more gentle refill bourbon the whole time at that age. But if the malt, can cope with that level and it makes a nice sweet dram, you know what you're getting in for. Happy days.
Definitely the sweet and the fruity. Maybe not so much the mellow.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The zing is nice. It's not a harsh prickle though. It's like it is more of a like a sherbet fizz kind of effervescence on the back.
Yeah,
that's coming from the strength, but yeah.
It's that fizz. So this was October malt of the month, 269 for a bottle, 48 of them in the country. I think there's still a few left. It's just very good.
It is definitely like apricots and peaches in syrup, isn't it? Like, on the palate, that's really nice. I agree 100% about 128s, Distillery 128s.
Yeah.
It's that similar type of vibrancy, but then interestingly, this is almost 20, and most of them are maybe at the 10, 9 to 11 kind of mark when they're hitting that same flavour profile.
I feel like this is the sort of dram that you'd give to someone if they're not a huge whiskey drinker, but they describe what their flavors, the flavors they like are as, I just like whiskey tasting whiskey.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and if you're giving them that elevated, like this is higher ABV, it's nice and clean. It's got a nice. There is malt characteristic underneath it, but the fruit's dominant. Which a lot of when you're really talking to people about whiskey, it's kind of sweet, fruity, smoky, red fruit, like sherry cask, basically. Call it sherried. Are your kind of categories, but this is definitely the fruity.
Good note from Betty. I think apricots. I think you're correct, Betty.
Yeah, agreed. Not that there's right or wrong with everyone tasting at home, but I think the three of us, Betty included, definitely get the same note there.
Of course, everyone's palate is different. That's the important thing to remember. If you don't taste any of these tasting notes, that's okay, because these can be pretty wild sometimes, and they're also an amalgamation of like 6 people's notes.
I will put water in that at some point.
Yep.
Just when I've got a little bit lower down, because I like it just fine, and it's reasonably low as it is for us, but I think it would cope as well. It's actually, compared to some of the other ones we've got as well, it's lost a decent amount of ABV over that time.
It has. I can't remember what the Maverick was.
Yeah, that's nice.
I can't shake that 128 note, to be honest. In a very good way. I mean, if you like your syrupy, full flavored drams, that's a good pick.
Definitely, and they usually, in my mind, have that one dominant note. Whether it's like Mad as a Box of Frogs was that confectionery raspberry, Millions of Peaches was peaches, surprisingly, and then this is sort of that. This could almost be something to do with apricots, and you could disguise it as a 128.
Yeah, I'd definitely say apricots, cream, and that strawberry sort of cream note definitely came out more for me that you were talking about before.
Yep.
Towards the end. Shall we?
That's a sipper. That's good. I'm happy to move it on because I think I'll definitely leave a little bit of that as well and come back. I will try the water, but I'll also just let that breathe a bit more because.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that goes. How that goes for you, but I'm excited to get to the next one because the next one is a Speyside malt, and we do have some poetry associated.
Speyside malts. Well, we should talk about a particular person and poetry, I suppose. Robin Lang.
Absolutely.
Who's done a lot with us in the UK and actually has done stuff with Melbourne members as well because, God, how long ago was it? But he basically recorded a special session for us.
3 years.
3 years.
About that, because that was my first. That was early in my first year. Society at
PJs.
Yeah, PJs.
No, it was good because so for those who don't know Robin Lang, he's worth a listen. He's called the sort of the whiskey bard. He's primarily a musical artist, but he's also a bit of a historian about the lore, Lore, of Scottish folk songs and poems. The Robbie Burns, the traditional poetry, things that are said and done at Cayley's, that kind of thing. And he's got a series of books. One of them is called, I guess, he's called The Whiskey Bard more commonly, but his book is, or one of them is called The Whiskey Muse, maybe more about his poetry than his singing. And then he's got another interesting one here, which is called The Whiskey River, which, if you can see that, yep, which is more of that gathering of historical facts and lore stories as opposed to poetry. As we move on to the next dram, though, if we want to flick it up, Adam, I might, because we'll do the reveal and I'll say it without saying it. But this is his page on the next one. Don't think Andrew and Matt will get me in trouble for revealing it in this way.
Well, unless you can read backwards, you haven't revealed anything really.
Well, this is his little the Whiskey River compilation, and he compiles a few little stories and things. But I think interestingly, as a Speyside fact, he says the two distilleries, Glenlossie and Mannockmore, although quite separate, share the on-site warehousing and even a dark grains plant. Nonetheless, they are operated as one distilling unit, although the stills are obviously different. and have the same management and staff. In fact, he says, Adam, our earlier conversation, we were talking about this. He just says, for a while, they were operated in monthly rotations.
There you
go. So that's his main musing on Manickmore. We'll come to the poetry a little bit later down the tasting.
And we've got some. We've got a little map of Manickmore as well, which I'll chuck up.
So this just shows exactly what he meant. You can see there Glenlossie, the lower, and Manickmore to the north, but basically the same site.
Yeah.
Which I think, well, more than think, definitely shows you the, and Speyside's renowned for it, but all these distilleries that are unbelievably close together, having such different flavour. Like, I wouldn't have necessarily put Manickmore and Glenlossie as the inseparable two, as opposed to Manickmore and anyone else, or Glenlossie and anyone else in Speyside. But yet they are umbilically linked, but the different stills and the potentially different runs and sort of mash recipes makes them very different whiskies, despite being on the same site.
And you might ask, which dram is this? Is it the Glenlossie or the Manickmore? And it doesn't matter. It's just tasty. There is the distillery though. It's what Matt would call an unsexy distillery. I mean, look at it. It's pretty industrial. I mean, it is a workhorse for Diageo, I believe. And there's the bottle.
Particular bottle is definitely. We talk a lot about society getting historically getting like the atypical runs or the atypical casks from distilleries because they didn't want to give up their house style, but they were very happy to give us everything else. This is definitely not the house style, but probably not because of anything to do with the run, but because of the finish on this one, right?
Yes, and this is it's not the only extra matured, but ex-Sauternes barrique.
Which, if Matt's pontificated on rum, Sauternes is definitely my little rant about.
Your little thing?
Oh, I would want to try before I buy with the Sauternes, just because it's such a sweet fortified product.
Yeah.
That if it's either too long in it, or the cask was particularly wet, or all those things that make it too Sauternes driven, it ends up unbelievably sweet. Which this one is on the nose. It's definitely there, but then I had the fortune of having this with Andrew Durbridge and the crew in Hobart, featured in the Tour of Speyside tasting rounds we did, and this is
series of tastings.
Brilliant on the palate. Yeah.
Well, Betty's said syrup from stewed peaches, and that makes me very excited for it. What's the verdict?
Oh, it's good. It's big. It's big on the palate. It's big on the palate.
57.6.
Yeah, well, and even coming off the back of that 19, which was a bit lower to be fair, but even compared to the whiskey Barber, which is higher, it's not challenging. It's not a problem, but it's big.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think the ABV, it is a scientific fact, but a higher ABV doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a harsher whiskey.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
We had a Cowpuncher Rodeo's dram, the 140.14.12 in a whiskey, and that was, I think, 63%, and so many people were alarmed at how smooth that drank.
Yeah, well, I forget the one we had. I think it was the Glen Rothers, a young one, like 7 years old or 8 years old, and it was called. There's been a couple of names. I think it was Worth Hunting Down, Worth Chasing Down.
I remember Worth Hunting Down.
Hunting 4 or something, and it was basically like it was a 67% or 68%
30
or something.
Is that Distillery 30?
Yeah.
That was Worth Hunting Down.
Distillery 30. Yes, yeah.
DRDF. I remember that one. That was very good.
That was it. And we were at Whiskey Abbey, and everyone coming up was just
That's the one.
I cannot believe it's that AB. Like, they'd look at the bottle and go, that is absolutely nuts.
That was my first Whiskey Abbey 2 years ago. That was a good bottling.
That was very good. And like nice you say, I mean, 100% it's all about integration. I don't use that word heaps, but it's an example of it, because you can
but it's true.
Make harshness go away entirely by integrating properly.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, so many people say, well, why did you do an extra maturation? What was wrong with it originally? There was nothing wrong with it. Our spirits team like doing this because they like to see where they can take flavor. and this is an example of good integration. Mark Teague, 64, the rhyming distillery is appropriate inclusion in this virtual.
It's interesting. I've had this as the only rhyming distillery. I think I might have clashed with a few society people when I suggested that there's another one. They were like, no, definitely not. And I said, well, surely 23 is Brooklady, and they said, no, doesn't quite cut it. Now I've always thought that cuts it, but
Alex Morsey
was right about 23, but no, apparently this is the rhyming distillery.
Dov, I like Distillery 30 DRDFs. Yes, they are very good. Very good. Glad you enjoy them. This is great. I don't know if it's as big as I was expecting after you said it for me, but
maybe it was the transition I've had. I just sort of felt a bit bigger, but it's certainly not harsh. And I think it's very floral. I think the French is potentially a reference to it's an aromatic dram on the nose, and it carries through on the palate.
See, I thought I was getting a little bit of chocolate on the palate, but now in the after palate, I'm getting that sort of like fresh spring flower note.
Definitely more what I'm picking up, yeah, and a slight everything that's if there's a berry note, it's just that little bit more sort of macerated, or it's a little bit heightened sweetness on it, like sort of macerated cherry, not fresh cherry, kind of on the palate.
Yeah. So this has not been released. So it was first featured in Andrew Durbage's Grand Tour of Speyside tastings. I can't remember. I think South Australia might have gotten the first one, or it might have been the Brisbane tasting that got it first. But it hasn't been released in an Outturn yet, but it is on sale this evening. We have 12 bottles to sell. So if you do love it and you want to get more of it, tonight's the night.
Yeah, I think this is a very good lineup so far in terms of, I think all of them, I'm not in a rush to finish any of them. I think they're all like changing as we go quite rapidly, actually.
Yeah, no. Mark Teague, 54 is a near rhyme too.
I think that would only count, Teague, if you pronounce that 50 fower. But again, I think that was Durbage's comment about my Brooklady. Don't think pronunciation quite cut it. Man, as if the society codes weren't already confusing enough, and then we're having a sidebar cryptic discussion about rhyming them with the distillery names.
It's like one of those Outturn side chats.
That's right.
They've been popping up.
Welcome to Nerd Hour.
Dob Burns, one of my favourite 30s was riding a duck bareback up Mount Etna. Ah, yes, the infamous name.
Yep.
Always returns. It was a good one.
It was a very good dram as well. It got almost like mocked because the name was so crazy. But the liquid in the bottle was excellent.
As if a bit too French for its own good is, a normal name.
Exactly.
It's all fun. Isn't that right, Matt? Yeah.
Unless you're an American member when the government says no to half your names.
Yeah, sorry. We get all the fun names.
Yep.
64 to 131. That was very good.
That was very good.
I don't think. What are your thoughts? Controversial for your opinions, but what were your thoughts on the Outturn integration?
It's one of the better ones I've had. I mean, I like this one. It was my bottle buy from when I was fortunate to do the Derbs tour down in Hobart. And there were some good drams at that as well. But yeah, no, it's just got enough sweetness to make it a really enjoyable perfume dram. And I quite like some of that. I can't use any of the terms that I actually quite enjoy, because when you use them around people who love old whiskey, like old bottles, they say, well, that was the notes that you got with all the soapy complaints in particular whiskeys, like, your Auchentoshes and Memoirs back in the day. But it's things like potpourri for me is too much. But there's like fresh garden floral, which is not sort of soapy in any way. That's such a good tasting note. But then you start to talk about flowers and florals, and people go, "Oh, well, that's sort of an off note," or get that out of my whiskey. I love it. In fact, I used to love those. I still do if I could still drink them. The sort of clear, like non-opaque Bamor bottles, like Voyage and a few others with the ships sort of printed onto them, that had a little bit of that, and I just thought they were brilliant. And some tragics and big fans are like, no, it's too much for get that flower out of my dram. But I think this has got just enough that I get all of that I want, plus the fruit that's nice. The sweetness is elevated, but it's not just like a really sickly sweet cocktail or something, which is not to my palate.
No, I definitely think so. I mean, it is second fill Sauternes, not first fill, so that might play a part. But yeah, that was nice. Dare I say, a little bit reminiscent of your 94.
It's interesting actually you bring that up because it's spicy and sweet profile, but I don't get any spice really.
No, but I do get a tiny bit of wood polish.
You definitely varnish. Definitely polish, which might also be the French reference, like that nice, clean French lacquer sort of thing. But yeah, no, it's I mean, maybe it's the only profile it can be in thinking about it. But yeah, definitely less spice on this one than those 94s have. Sort of less of the Christmas spice, nutmegs and bakery spices.
Oh, those are great notes. Teague, was this bottle possibly named for your Melbourne compatriot, Billy Cheeky? That one's for you, Morsey, I take it?
I reckon we've had other ones that would be more appropriate for Gilly. Like I'm sure we've had a Frenchman in New York or something that we could use. But yeah, I think this one. It's actually it's interesting. Now you've said the polish, I think that was probably it. I associate it with real florals and lightness, but I actually think it's got the polish. I think that's what it is. But Billy wants to claim it. Go for it, mate. Yeah, that's good. I think this is going to be a very interesting jump to the next two.
Well, I picked 4.334. Is that the code? Yeah, 334. Because this was probably my favorite dram from September Outturn, and it just seemed to fly under the radar. It was such a refreshing distillery fall. It was lightly peated, but I found there was barely any peat. And I'm excited to go back to it and see how that's going now.
I love a lightly peated 4.
Yeah. Let's get it. There it is. Nice. So this is 4.334 Hill Walker's Delight, 12-year-old small batch single malt in the lightly peated flavor profile.
Oh, that's good on the nose.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, 100%. Like if I hadn't seen it on my tasting map and I hadn't seen the light green, and I'd picked that up and just nosed it immediately, like quite quickly, like a very sort of Richard Patterson, like, hi, hello, how are you, sort of speed.
Make sure it's okay.
Wafting it, yeah. I might have missed the peat.
It's definitely more peated than it was the first time I tried it, but it's still very light, which is good because it's lightly peated. I love 4s and 93s. Dov, you're going to love November Outturn. Whew. Could almost be oily and coastal. Yeah, I mean that's fair. There is that fine line between lightly peated and oily and coastal, and we've seen 93s which typically are oily and coastal. We've seen them in the lightly peated profile before.
This has also got that. It's very Highland Park, and it's what I used to think was heather, like the nose of heather. But then I've had a few Scottish whiskey friends. So, do you actually know what heather tastes like and smells like? Like, have you ever sort of had anything that's really like been in the heather? I'm like, Well, yeah, I've been in heather, and to be honest, that didn't really smell like much. Like, I guess it hadn't rained or it hadn't been kicked up or whatever, so it didn't really let much on. So I think when I've been talking about heather for years, I really just mean whatever this type of Highland Park smells like. But it's got it. I think I probably might not have called Pete, but probably would have called it as a Highland Park.
Yeah. So this is for those playing along at home. So hopefully a few of you. This is not a single cask. It's still cask strength, but it is a series of ex-bourbon hogsheads that were then combined into a single first fill ex-bourbon barrel. So it's technically a small batch single malt. There was still only 242 produced, but official guidelines state that we cannot call it a single cask because
They
it
love
isn't
to
really.
change it too. Yeah, that for a long time I remember it was, it had to live its life in one single cask. And I think that's still true that it can, if it's one single cask into another single cask, no worries. But then if it's multiple, it's like no. But then you definitely used to be able to call this single malt because it came out of a single cask. Single cask, single malt. Because it came out of a single cask. But yes, like you say, I think it's all back to batch.
So they have changed it this year again. So if it is a single cask into a single cask, that's no longer a single cask.
Yeah, they like to take it away.
But just last year, that was 100% a single cask. So
yeah,
really, it's all just rules.
It is. If you like drinking it, doesn't really matter what we call it. The labels will change. The liquid won't change.
Whiskey Barber proved that. The festival rare releases prove that. The Highland Parks prove that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, I'm not particularly a snob about these things, but definitely I've liked some of these, whatever we're calling them, or whatever we used to call them, multiple casts into a single cast to finish to create a release. I've liked them, some of them more than I've liked true single cast Highland Parks by us. Just depends on the dram.
As you said, it's the flavor. It's all about the flavor, and that's what the society is all about, as we all know. It's not about creating the most rarest and pure release. It's about creating the most flavorsome release. And that's, as we were saying with Whiskey Barber, for example, our spirits team, whilst it might have started off as some fun with the heresy releases, it's now evolved into something so intricate. Still fun for them, hopefully, but it really is just about trying to bring out so many different flavors. Because when you think about it, water, barley, yeast, wood, thyme, people, the 6 key ingredients, it's not much that gives us these incredible flavors.
Too true. I've been trying to find a very specific Distillery 4 piece of poetry.
Oh, yeah.
I can't come across one right at the moment. The Whiskey Muse books, for those watching, there's one, and well, this is one, or the Unnumbed one, and Whiskey Muse 2. Both, in fact, I think all Robert Lang's books are nice connection to the society, also illustrated by Bob Dewar. So you might see a very familiar style in the illustration. Some of our releases more recently have had his illustrations back on them. Guy's been great for us since the beginning. But all our, in fact, every single whiskey that was released by the Society after Bob was brought on board in Edinburgh had its own little custom illustration in Outturn, or the bottling list, or the newsletter, or whatever it was called at whichever time. Which is pretty cool, because it meant that if you didn't remember cast numbers, you could technically remember a little cool Bob Dewar cartoon and be talking about the same bottle as someone else. But then, we did a lot more bottlings than I think they ever thought we would, so that had to go by the wayside. But very good illustrations. I love his style on our bottles and in all of Robin Lang's books.
Yeah, and we did see, as you said, more of his illustrations come through, especially last year with the 40th anniversary. That was a time to look back into the future. Betty Petrie says, "Ooh, my cup of tea." Yes, we know you love your peated drams, so 2 delights in this pack for you.
I'm with you on that. That is excellent Highland Park.
This is good, but I'm a little bit surprised that it's a lot more peated than I remember it being. Like, it's still lightly peated, but I genuinely can't explain at this point what what happened the first time I tried it with the Whiskey and Element team. It was just so much less peat in a good way. It was more farmyardy, but this is just great. And it's up there. I think it's the highest ABV so far, 62.6%.
Peat is definitely there on the palate, no question. But even that real quick waft, it's still very, very light.
Also, this was distilled, what, seven days from now, back in 2009. There you go.
Oh.
What were you doing in 2009 in October?
2009 in October. Wouldn't have a clue. I'm too old now, Adam, to remember that. That's too far into my past.
Yes.
More recent for you.
I mean, it was the same amount of time ago, technically, but yeah.
Well, that's a good point.
But no, I was
old memory. I was my second year of uni. I know that, but
I was grade 7.
I
was 1 month away from seeing Pearl Jam for the first time. So
nice.
But that's the distillery there, Distillery 4. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now. And there's the no.
Yeah, sorry guys, I've said it about 10 times. So if you're trying to keep blind,
I've said it too. There's their kilning process in action taken by our team a few years ago.
Well, even when I was there in the last time I actually made it all the way up to Orkney, because I don't get up there every trip, was probably 2017 actually now, possibly 19. And they were still doing a small amount of floor maltings themselves, just a very, very small number. I think in 17 they told me it was around 10%, but I'm not sure if that was even right. Like it felt wrong for the amount of volume I knew they had to produce.
Yeah, okay.
But maybe it was 10% of a particular X number of their release types, and for the other ones they didn't or something. But yeah, it was nice to see it still going though. They're getting rarer and rarer now, the operational floor maltings at distillery sites.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people look at it as a, it's a sort of an old school method that should be preserved. But at the end of the day, if there's an easier way to do it, they're business. So
it's hard work. That's for sure. Those who've done sort of Springbank School, I think they still get you to do a day. One of the days of Springbank School is floor maltings or something, and man, it's pretty backbreaking.
Yeah. Okay. Dove Burns. They have all the coups.
The Highland coups. The Island coups.
I'm a huge fan of that one. I'm still a huge fan of it. I'm glad we got to have it again.
It's lovely. I'm actually glad. It's got a lovely vein of sweetness on the palate, but yeah, the peat definitely more there, and more that Highland Park flavour, which you kind of quintessentially know it. But I do think the light is the right category, and I just can't
absolutely
give the nose still is like.
I'm
savory.
There's almost I don't want to say iodine ice cream sort of note, but there's like a little like a vanilla bean
definitely
sweetness to it on the nose.
Definitely.
That dram is available now, $1.99 a bottle.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's actually some of those drams. Like there's been a few 53s. In fact, I think there's a whole era of 53, a few 4s, a few 29s that are just so vanillic, and I reckon it works really, really well with the peat. Yeah, that's really good. Big tick.
Oh my god, I made the mistake of nosing the next dram.
I'm happy to move on if you are. I'm ready.
It's very good. It's very good.
Okay, here we go. Here we go.
I had Miranda, ex-Whiskey and Element, current Sullivan's Cove team, messaged me a couple of weeks ago. She was at Whiskey and Element, and the picture was this bottle, which I will show you because this is 16.84 Linctus glazed lamb. And she said, this is very good. And she's right. It is so good. We've seen, I would say maybe 3 or 4 Distillery 16 peated bottlings come through in just the last few months. And they've all just been absolute bangers at $1.69 a bottle as well. It's really hard to go wrong. This one in particular, though, on the nose alone, I think it might be my favorite.
There's a lot to unpack. It's the Linctus I get. If I'm right about what Linctus is, I think it's that sort of antiseptic, like very medicinal.
I'm
aroma.
definitely getting the antiseptic, but I have to really get my nose in there to get it. I was getting a wave of sweet, like almost caramel ice cream initially on the nose.
Yeah, I agree. It's actually the lamb bit that I'm searching for. I think the Linctus I can tick. Some of the dessert elements definitely like caramelized vanillas, like maybe salted caramel, burnt caramel.
I think on the nose, and I don't know if this is just the power of suggestion or not, but I think some of that antiseptic note might be blending into a lamb note, like a real char-grilled, lamb yid or spit.
Hey, it's probably what happened for the panel, given the name. So, given it's Linctus glazed lamb, they are connected.
Yeah.
In the panel's eyes.
Oh, that's a great point. Actually, I didn't even think of that.
Still struggling to get it. I'm sure it'll develop out of my glass,
and that's the thing to remember. Everyone's palate's different.
Actually, I haven't tasted it yet either, so maybe it's a whole dram effect.
Well, I'm interested to taste this one again because I can't remember much of it from the first time I tried it. But this has an interesting maturation period because, as you might see in your tasting notes, it was 4 years ex-bourbon hogshead and then another 4 years of an ex-toasted peaty cask that matured a distillery 66. And that 66 was .124, grippy and captivating. Now, the thing about grippy and captivating was it was a 13-year-old that was matured for 11 years in an Oloroso butt and then 2 years in a second fill toasted hogshead. So this is that toasted hogshead. So it's a refill toasted hogshead that's had previously matured Oloroso matured spirit from 66, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. It's hard. It's I had to think about it slowly.
It's another journey. It's another journey, but essentially there is sherry influence on the slightest degree in this 16.
That is really. I mean, talk about integration. Comments I made on Baba being, oh, there's reasonably complex. Rum is a bit tricky. You got to integrate with spirit. But yeah, they've because I've just tasted it. The palate is actually quite. I wouldn't even say well balanced. I go one step further. Well, it is well balanced, but I go one step further and say less complex than the nose, which is pretty crazy given everything that's in it. Still looking for lamb. Still looking for that clear lamb note because lamb's quite distinctive.
It is. I mean, Betty Petrie has said smoked fish this time. And I'm curious, Betty, is that a nosing note or a palate note? Please let us know in the comments below. Dov, thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next time. Keep an eye out for Queensland Christmas party email, which will be going out in the next week, hopefully.
There's a really nice. It is umami, and there's a really nice salty effect happening on the palate at the moment, like almost a drying, but it's
definitely.
It is like you're eating food, like salty food, which I'm getting closer. I'm obviously looking for it too. So, like you said, power of suggestion, and I'm actively searching for it, but. I might be making connections that don't necessarily exist, but definitely umami and salty is coming through.
Betty, palate. Okay, smoked fish on the palate. I mean, I'm definitely not getting smoked from this smoked fish on the nose. So, by the way, the picture you're looking at and have been looking at for the last probably minute and a half is the distillery, which I must say is quite lovely.
You can't see the
Um,
massive grouse statue from that angle either, which is kind of nice / appropriate now.
and I'm not sure, but I think there is an OB range for this distillery, isn't there not?
There's a sort of, I
There
think,
is.
I'd still say reasonably recently revived, or
Okay.
quite nice iteration. But yeah, it wasn't for a long time. It was very much just blends for the previous owners, and then I think they've gone very what's the word, Spartan with the design of their OBs now. I think it's pretty much white label, blue writing,
Okay.
job done. I thought I'd found a poem on this because I got excited because I actually saw one that Robin Lang had written
And
himself actually in this, and then I got ahead of myself because I remembered that this distillery has a famous cat, and I think actually the cat at this distillery holds the Guinness World Record for the most lifetime kills of mice. Which I think they also did a bit of speculation based on, took a sample, extrapolated out a bit, but remembered he was called Mauser, Towser the Mauser was what he was called, and now I've lost it. But the cat in this one that Robin wrote is a different name, and then when you actually read his poem in full, he's talking about Bamor's cat. So almost a link. But now you've been down the same emotional roller coaster that I was when flicking through the book.
And sometimes it's about the journey. It's like Lord of the Rings, it's not about the destination, it's about the walking.
I'm just walking to Mordor, and you're all watching me do it.
Exactly. I'm not sure how correct this is because I feel like many distilleries claim that they're the oldest, but allegedly 1763 this is.
Oh, I'd definitely say it's the oldest licensed, I would say, unquestionably, in terms of records. But yeah, everyone will claim they were doing it illegally or unlicensed before that.
So yeah, my note was this is the first, the oldest recorded distillery.
So I think it's actually a battle. Is it a battle with Bamor? Because I think Bamor are very old, but this is unquestionably the a bit earlier in terms of the official records. So Bamor's response is, well, yeah, but we were definitely built and operational before we were licensed, and that's how we sneak in. And then there's a nice little back and forward between them as to what's your measure? What are you really testing? Because there's definitely some blokes on top of a hill way earlier than that with a little still set up making moonshine that would count if we're talking about any whiskey being made in the Isles. But definitely the oldest license issued by the taxman would be this one. Write in, and I will shortly give you Adam's home address to write all your letters to. Can play it if you don't agree.
Please send all your mails to my office.
Actually, complain directly to the UK branch, and Matt will have to deal with them.
Yeah, exactly. Send it to Matt. Sorry, Matt. Yeah. It's probably
really.
Oh, this is very good. I actually might buy a bottle of this. I purchased Don't Fear the Chili Reaper.
Yes.
Partly because of the Blue Oyster Cult reference, but also because it was a very good dram. But this, I think I might actually grab this because this is really good.
I think it's another friend and member, Mal, Adelaide member, loves we have a little thing about the couple of legendary 16s, like Breakfast in a Highland Croft and Womble Pie, and there were a few really fun ones that were just so savoury and like, the Willy Wonka thing where he's got is it the Never Ending Gobstopper? No, one of the chewing gum or whatever Violet Beauregard does is all the meals in one lolly.
Yep. I can't
Those drams were, they were like that. It was sort of, you'd have one thing and you'd hit savoury black pudding, more meaty umami like a sausage or something, and then you'd go down and there'd be like porridge and oats and everything, and then you'd hit your more sweeter dessert fruits, and they all sort of were full meals in a bottle. This is getting close to that. It doesn't have a heap of the of the malt, like the not getting a heap of the porridge bit or any
Yeah.
of the real grain, but it's definitely got the umami salinity to makes you sort of think of maybe salted meats.
And yeah, I mean, definitely dessert first for me on the nose.
Like, yeah, you led with, sort of caramel ice cream sort of vibes. Yeah,
Yeah, very good. Betty says, thanks for another great night. Most enjoyable. Catch you next month.
Thanks,
Thank
Betty.
you, Betty, for tuning in. Always a pleasure, and we'll make sure there's some Peter Drams next month as well.
Definitely.
Well, actually, I can do a little bit of a slight reveal.
Oh, it's a reveal.
A slight reveal. So next month's virtual will not actually be a virtual. It will be a double virtual with December Outturn. So it's going to be November, December, double virtual with 8 drams.
Excellent.
And that's going to take place in December. So keep an eye out in November Outturn, which again, preview on the 8th of November. But yeah, good fun.
So for those who did what I've done and left a little bit in every glass, I'm going back to do a 2-second summary of what's happened now. Barber, sweeter, less rum note. Here we go. This will be quick fire. Ooh, very much more on the lactose and ice cream notes on 19. A little bit less on the fruit, but still very much berries, strawberries and raspberries forward. 64 is less floral, but fruitier. Maybe that peach element that we were talking about is way more. 4 is just brilliant. 4's gone more salty, more of that island coastal element to it. As I think Dov said it, oily and coastal was a possible profile on the nose. I think that's even more true now.
Yep.
And 16 is 16, which we've just done. But
16 hasn't had as much time to sit.
Hasn't had as much time, but very nice. Still very good. Does seem to go a little bit less of that salty umami, just when your nose is full of the, especially the first 3, which are quite fruity, quite sweet.
With a little bit of, I mean, as much time as it's had since I poured it, the 16, it's actually starting to nose more like a Society 29, I think, which I also always get those mothball and like really heavily boiled rice in water notes.
Ah, yeah, interesting. Because I think we have touched on that in a previous virtual about the associated notes for your 29s. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get now you've said the rice, like sort of that the starch that comes out of like not overcooked rice, but just that crust almost like forms
like a little bit of lemon.
Yeah. I definitely get the rice note on this 16. That's the whole meal thing, I think, coming back around of like, it's got so much food and sort of dinner and whole meal notes in these 16s. Just maybe it's couscous, and that's what made the panel think of lamb. There's going to be my last reach of logic on how they get to lamb, because I still don't quite get, if I'm honest with myself, a real lamb note.
That's fair. I think the closest I got was that antiseptic glaze on the lamb on the nose, and I really had to dig for it.
Yeah. That is a good dram.
Well, that was a fine tasting, if I do say so myself. But before we go, just a few announcements, some housekeeping. Melbourne members, High Fidelity Drams, SMWS and Addicted to Audio Redux is going on sale this Thursday, so you will get an email about it in about 26 minutes, 25 minutes now, I believe. So that is going to be another hi-fi and whiskey pairing session like we did last year. Myself, Alex, and new national ambassador, what am I saying? Lachlan Watt will be joining us for his first official tasting.
Don't fire me, mate. I need Victoria. Can't get rid of me. Don't put new state ambassadors in.
No. Lachlan Watt will be joining us. It'll be his second one. He'll be up in Adelaide for our RLF launch in collaboration with them. And also we have end of year bash and trivia night with New South Wales State Ambassador and Australia Chairman Andrew Durbidge Friday, 29th of November, the RACA, 6 p.m. arrival, 6:30 start time. That's 6 drams, 6 rounds of trivia, and a supper. So if you haven't bought tickets to that, please do. It's going to be amazing and a good way to end the year, 29th of November. And also Melbourne, our final tasting for the year, a whiskey cruise, Saturday, 7th of December. That's a, 3.5 hours?
It will be sort of four, I think, total, but there'll be a little bit of, embarkation, debarkation time in that. So it'll be 3.5 hours on the water drinking drams.
Yeah, and there's going to be about a dozen drams. You'll have, the classic token system you're all familiar with. You'll have about 7 drams to go for, and you can purchase extra ones if you need, or you can just go to Alex's stand because we all know how
I forget the token system immediately, or at least at the appropriate time when I've had all my tokens as well. So,
Exactly, and that will also include beer and soft drinks and food. So definitely get along to that if you can. And that's all from us. Keep an eye out for November Outturn, which will be launching on the 15th of November. Remember, 15th of November, not the first Friday, but more on that in your inboxes soon. Until then, Alex, thank you so much for joining me. Matt, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. And thank you all for tuning in. We will see you next time. Appreciate it. Slanjava.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Da, 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 da.